What's up, guys? I know it's been a while since my last video, but we're gonna get it straight into it. This is gonna be sort of different compared to other videos that I made. Instead of like montages and stuff, it's gonna be sort of an informative kind of talk, and the topic for today is specifically gonna be Officers Candidate School for the Marine Corps. I graduated OCC 228 August 11th, so a little over 2 months now since I've been away from Brownfield. And yeah, we're going to be talking about my experience, sort of what OCS is in general, and probably one of my biggest takeaways from it. So we'll get right into it. So OCS is Officers Candidate School, and it's broken down into 3 different training sessions, I guess you would call it. We have PLC, Platoon Leaders Course, Platoon Leaders Course Combined, and OCC, which is Officers Candidates Course. And PLC's typically 6 weeks in between your freshman and sophomore years of college. PLC Combined will be a 10-week course, and typically you'll see guys who are kind of juniors, they go during like their junior year. And then for OCC, Officers Candidates Course, that will be post-grad. So after you get your bachelor's degree, then you go to OCC, and that is also 10 weeks. The application process, for me personally, wasn't too bad. I had initially tried to apply or get appointment to some of the military academies, so I sort of had everything set up already. I took my tests. I had physical fitness tests already in the books, and DOD-MERBs and stuff like that. So transitioning over to applying for PLC wasn't too much of a hassle for me. I would definitely recommend reaching out to your OSO or Officer Selection Officer and asking them exactly what the application process is like. If you don't know where your OSO is in your state or your county or whatever, definitely Google it. If you know where an enlisted recruiter is, it doesn't hurt to ask them if they can kind of shoot you in the right direction. Some of them will kind of just blow you off, but you never know until you ask. So yeah, that's kind of OCS in general. Getting straight into it. So first, my experience at OCS. I can break it down into 5 phases. I think it was 5 phases. So the first phase was in processing. And in processing is typically the first week that you get there. I think a term synonymous with in processing is like dead week, because majority of the time you're just doing a lot of paperwork and a lot of waiting around. So kind of just verifying like your application, your packet that you bring with you or that they have on file. But yeah, in processing is pretty brutal, in my opinion, honestly, because like I said, you're waiting around a lot. You're kind of waiting in anticipation to meet your sergeant instructors. Phases 2 through 4, I don't remember off the top of my head what like exactly the names were, but that will encompass majority of like your periods of instruction. You have your classes, your academic classes, and then you'll have like your actual field training sort of practices as well. And that's also where the bulk of like all the graded events are going to be in order to graduate. And in between these phases 2 through 4, you kind of slowly progress into leadership roles. So you'll start off small with like fire team billets, and then you'll build up to your like platoon and your company billets. Some of the better billets, in my opinion. Platoon sergeant was definitely the hardest. I won't say platoon sergeant, but maybe for like squad leader or fire team leader, those were pretty fun, because you kind of get that introductory level leadership with the small elements, but you're not given like an entire platoon to look after. So there's that. So that's like I said, in between from phases 2 through 4, you'll see that trend of the responsibilities getting higher and higher. And finally, you have phase 5, which is out processing, and that's kind of when things start rolling down. It's definitely not a time for you to get complacent, because there are a lot of times when people get complacent during out processing because they think they've already made it, and they get kicked out for something stupid. So you definitely don't want to be complacent during out processing. Just because you're turning in gear, or your sergeant instructors and the rest of your platoon staff are starting to get sort of friendlier with you, and I say friendly in very loose terms, but just because of all those things, you shouldn't get complacent to where you start making these irrational decisions and kind of putting your completion of OCS on the line. So that's out processing. And yeah, it's kind of basically all it is in a nutshell for those 10 weeks. So you'll have like 1 week of in processing, and then 1 week of out processing. So you'll have like 8 weeks of actual training. So now we go into talking point number 2, which is the importance of preparation prior to leaving for OCS. And I know, I mean, like, to some people it might be a no-brainer, but considering you're a college student and you have a relatively high demanding degree, I know you need to focus on school, but spend just as much time trying to prepare yourself for OCS, especially if, and I mean, this isn't to say that height is a handicap, but I had a good amount of time struggling during the last couple of weeks, and I think it was just a combination of negative self-talk and that idea of me being shorter, I guess, than everyone else, that sort of led me to those difficulties during the final weeks of OCS. And basically, there was an event. It's called the E-Course. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube here, like talking about more in depth of what it is, but I failed it a bunch of times, and the absolute final chance they gave me to run the E-Course, I passed it. So that's that story in a nutshell. But yeah, it was I didn't prepare mentally, I didn't prepare physically enough to the point where I could have just gone through the E-Course one shot and passed it. I had to kind of go through that process, or that just absolutely horrible process of just questioning whether or not I would go home. And thankfully I didn't. Thankfully I was able to get through that last chance and graduate, so there's that. But yeah, just take it from my personal experience, and definitely place a lot more time into preparation. Many people will be in college if you're watching this video, and I mean, for some people it was a lot easier, but for others you definitely kind of need to make that choice, kind of need to kind of decide and analyze like what exactly your weaknesses are, because that's also what OCS is. It's going to address a lot of your weaknesses. If it isn't physical, it's going to be academic. If it isn't academic, it's going to be leadership. There are going to be flaws that you find out while you're there, and you need to understand that prior to going, and working on them prior to going to OCS in order to kind of capitalize on that environment and kind of develop yourself more as a person, instead of like having to find out your weaknesses while you're at OCS instead of like already addressing them prior to. So that's that talking point. And then the final talking point that I'll get into is when you're there, when you're at OCS, when you're on brownfield, take it day by day. Whatever goes on during that day, leave it during that day. You'll be in a platoon with like 40 to 60 guys. So every now and again there's going to be tension. That's inevitable. You've got a bunch of different people with different outlooks, different mindsets, different opinions on things, and whenever you're tasked with making a decision, there's always going to be conflict. So when those conflicts happen, you want to do your best to try and resolve them during that day, but don't hold any grudges, because that just kind of takes more concentration away from what you're actually trying to do, is you're trying to graduate. And that kind of plays into better choices as well, because if you're kind of vehement and you aren't able to control your emotions because you kind of hold those grudges, then you'll become a lot more, it'll be a lot harder for you to deal with everything day by day as the days go on. enjoy the liberties that you get. Typically you'll have them, I don't remember when we first started, maybe it was after week 4, but just enjoy them. Hydrate as much as you can. Pedialyte whenever you go to the PX or any place around Quantico or in around like outside of the base. Just go buy some Pedialyte, down those things like water, and just kind of mentally prepare yourself. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you guys have any specific topics that you would like me to go into involving OCS, then let me know in the comment section below. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.